Thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon. Michael, I think you already answered my question in part, the question before the last one. But we've spoken a lot about change in business and in organisations. Mine's on a personal level. What advice can you give to someone who's full of motivation and wants to do something great, but is stuck in the fear of their comfort zone and is not willing to sort of push to actually make that change or take that risk?
This is something I do every 6 months. I go away for a day completely on my own, and I imagine I'm on my deathbed and what matters. And when you get there, you know, I can tell you what matters is, did you have the courage just to be yourself? Because if you talk to old people about it, really old people, my dad's now, you know, he's like that, and they're not worried about what people are going to think of them and da-da-da. This is something for the young, actually. You know,
yeah, I find in organizations, usually it's the very young people, new people don't have a problem. It's the middle folks that sort of keep the young people from expressing, and then the senior people are at a level where they're trying all sorts of different things. So if you're young, try to find someone who's senior to fly some cover for you. If you're in the middle, start to realize, well, why am I so protective? What am I really protecting? Why don't I act a little bit more like the young guy coming in, young person coming in? But yeah, that's what
So there's a mind switch you can make, which is, you know, the fear that's holding you back. If I don't try, then I've failed because I haven't tried. If I don't screw up every now and again, I know that I'm not trying enough. I'm not being risky enough. So I just take the view that I am going to screw up, right? And if I'm not, it's like if I travel a lot. If I don't miss a plane every now and again, I'm spending too much time at the airport, basically. And my wife hates it because I literally get there, you know, because I'm a member of the Chairman's Lounge, like 5 minutes before the flight goes off. It's a game I play. How late can I get there and still get on the plane? But that's the mindset, which is, hey, you know, the whole, you know, you're gonna, every great entrepreneur, everybody who's, you know, I've done some workshops and I thought, oh, I wouldn't do that again. But I learned so much doing it. So if you can get yourself into that mindset, which is, you know, I'm going to screw up, that's part of it, and laugh at yourself when you do, it changes the whole story, you know, sort of narrative.
Thanks,
I don't know
Michael.
whether that's helpful, but that's the other thing I do a lot.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
So if you want to see an example of someone who constantly puts out and often fails, look at me for the last 2 days. I've certainly missed a few. Lady there, final question of the conference. Make it a good one. No pressure, but understand that there's 500 people waiting for this moment. So over to you.
Thank you. My name's Alex Marsden from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, so I'm used to pressure. For Michael and Brendan and all of you, thank you very much. But it's a bit of a tough question, I suppose. We did have a lovely man on secondment from McKinsey to us very recently, and he actually showed a video of you speaking, and it obviously affected him a lot, and it was really lovely to see. So that was really good. But I've got a tougher question, and they are lovely sentiments, thank you. But how have you actually integrated this creativity and emotion and intuition into the incredibly strong, successful, tough consultancy model paradigm that McKinsey's and Boston Consulting Group and all of the other incredibly strong, powerful models that they have, where they've got answers early up, they have favourite models of change management, they come into organisations, they've got a cookie-cutter approach at times, one has to feel. And then sort of, you know, shoehorns in, and then the product has to get delivered by a certain time frame, and therefore it is, and very often with a tried and tested model that you've used very successfully. How do you integrate that? And I suppose Brendan too, how do you integrate the creativity and the intuition with, you know, the very strong, powerful consultancy models?
So it's a great question, and the answer is McKinsey is the hardest place in the world to do what I do. And when I started doing it, all of my friends thought I was mad. And the reason is because, as you know, it's the crack troops of sort of Western capitalism. You know, it's the analytical, you know, it's in spiral dynamics terms, it's that achievement machine polished to the ultimate degree. And I'm coming from a very different place in the way this works. But the reason, and in fact, the only way I got it to do any of this in the firm at all was I just went and did it with clients and didn't tell them that I was doing it. And in fact, the very first project I did was over in Western Australia because I knew no one would ever go there. And if I really screwed up, it'd take them at least 6 to 12 months to work out what I'd done. But it was very successful, thankfully, and the CEO of that organisation, a guy called John Akehurst, who was a pretty tough sort of fellow, spoke very highly of it, and that sort of... But when I actually got him in and we talked to some of my partners about what I was doing, they looked at me like, this is not McKinsey, you can't possibly do this, you can't possibly do this sort of work. And I just stuck at it because it was my mission, my meaning, to actually create a business environment that was much more holistic and integrated. And that's why I'm still there. And the good news is, after 15 years of working at this, it is now working its way very much into the firm itself. The hardest thing I ever have to do when I go and talk to clients is take a colleague with me normally, because they're like, oh my goodness, you talk about emotion and meaning and what's that got to do with... So, but that journey has changed enormously, and I'd say that about a third of our partners globally have now had an experience of like a 5-day. We actually have integrated this into all our training programs in the firm, right? And I'm now in charge of the training programs for all the top 500 people in the firm. That's one of my roles, and I lead all those programs. And so I've sort of put my energy now into the firm. But it's a great question, and the only reason I'm there is because actually I think it's the best distribution system for ideas and business in the world. And I'm sort of piggybacking what I believe on top of the McKinsey system really quite explicitly. Yeah. And I'm trying to make McKinsey more like me than me more like McKinsey. But that takes a lot of courage to do that.
Thank you, Michael.
What I would add to that is part of our methodologies, I call things prototypes or experiments, and you can disarm people a lot by saying, this is just a little experiment, or use the word temporary. Yeah. This is just temporary. It's a structure that's been there for 40 years, right? But so using that and then calling it an experiment, do it really small, and then you get some buzz about it, and then you start to expand it, versus the worst thing you can do is try to roll something out, because people then start to pick at it right away, versus there's no one behind it. So I love the word experiment or little temporary.
Thank
Pilot,
you, Brendan.
all sorts of good things like that.
Then you have to have patience.
Edward, would you like to have last words about how you introduce change and innovation into what appears to be an immovable, solid environment?
I think you need to take it seriously, not just talk about it. To have some structure which has a responsibility for innovation, just as you have R&D departments and so on, which is not especially innovation. You have an innovation department, a chief ideas officer and so on. But I must tell you a very amusing story about McKinsey's, I think. I was at a board meeting in Sydney, and across the table from me, there was this elderly blonde. And at that time, I had a blonde tester with me. And what is a blonde tester? You go up to someone, that's a someone, and you put a torch in one ear, and a piece of paper at the other, and a circle of light appears on the paper. And she got extremely offended. And I said, it's just physics, it's just physics. The light goes straight through and comes out on the paper. She got very offended. Anyway. It's like another story. I was having dinner.
I know who that was.
I have a dinner, probably. Dinner in London, a very big dinner. I was sitting next to the second richest man in India, and he was telling me that at school his son was first in this subject, and this subject, this subject, this subject. So I said, so genetics don't work? He got very offended, very offended.
Thank you, Edward. Thank you, Edward. Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask you to put your hands together and thank Brendan Boyle, Michael Rennie, and Edward de Bono. Thank you, gentlemen.